If the 2024 election were held today, Donald Trump would win the popular vote. But what about the Electoral College? In this video, we're going to take a look at the 2024 electoral map based on the newest poll from every single state. We have more polling from more states than ever, and Donald Trump has never performed this well in his 8 years in politics. We'll begin with the West Coast, where we have a whole slew of new polls, as well as our first poll ever for the 2024 cycle from the state of Hawaii, and let's just say Biden is performing a lot worse than he should. Starting off in Washington, the newest poll has Donald Trump ahead by 5 percentage points, and we're going to include the influence of RFK Jr. because he continues to poll over 10 percentage points in many of these states, and even Joe Biden, the incumbent president, is polling at 35% in a state that he won by 19 points. So Washington is going to be a red state, and this poll was conducted by the Independent Center. So on this map, Washington is going to be likely Republican. In Oregon, we see Joe Biden performing pretty poorly as well. He only leads by 11, and so this will make the state likely instead for Joe Biden. Any state in which a candidate is leading by more than 12 points is going to be solid. Anything from 5 to 12 is going to be likely. Any margin between 1 and 5 is lean, and any margin less than 1% is going to be categorized as tilt. And so moving on to California, the largest state in the country by population, it also has the most electoral votes. California, Joe Biden leads by 20 percentage points. This is very much in line with the polling average that we see here. California, a state that Biden won by 30 points. So honestly, not the best performance, but at least he's ahead. And so California is going to be our first solid blue state. Moving on to the two non-continental states, in Alaska, Donald Trump has more than doubled his 10-point lead from 2020. He now leads by a staggering 23 percentage points. This is a pretty big margin. Donald Trump is on track to win Alaska by a solid margin. There's no doubt about it. In Hawaii, I mean, just for context here, this is a state that Biden was able to win by 29 points in 2020. In 2016, Hillary Clinton, who lost the election, won Hawaii by 32 points. In 2008, Barack Obama won the state by 45 percentage points. That is just how blue of a state Hawaii is. But now in 2024, Joe Biden leads by just 8 percentage points in the latest poll conducted, again, by the Independent Center in the Aloha State. Biden at 42, Trump at 34, and Kennedy at 8. So the state of Hawaii is only going to be likely Democrat. Before we continue, only 12% of you guys are subscribed, so take this time to subscribe right now for more consistent political content leading up to the 2024 election. Moving on to our two competitive Sunbelt states on the West Coast, we have Nevada and Arizona, two states that narrowly went to Biden in the last election. But looking at 2024, these states are not going to be close because in Nevada, Trump leads by 7.5 percentage points in the polling average. According to the latest poll conducted by Emerson College and The Hill, he leads by 5. So Nevada is going to be a likely Republican state. The same level as Washington. Both of these states went to Biden. Washington was a solid blue state. They are now likely Republican, according to the most recent polling that we have. In Arizona, Donald Trump leads by 4% according to the latest poll. He's ahead by 4.7 in the polling average, a very solid lead for the former president, a lead that he's had throughout the entirety of the election cycle. So Arizona is just barely going to be a lean Republican state. And then up in Utah, we have Donald Trump ahead by 10 points according to the most recent poll. And this is still a pretty strong lead. Trump is still going to win Utah, but according to the polling right now, it is not going to be solid red. Now moving on to the states in the middle of the country, they're all going to be solid red. Trump leads by crazy large margins. They're not really new polls, so there's no point in covering them, but in states like Montana, North Dakota, South Dakota, the margins are in the 20s and the 30s. In Wyoming, it's a 50-point margin. Trump is doing great in Nebraska, although we don't have any polling from the individual districts, so we'll fill those in at the end of this video, but Trump is also dominating in these states of Kansas and Oklahoma as well. Now moving on to Colorado and New Mexico, these are two Democratic states from the last election. The last time that they went red was with the re-election of George W. Bush in 2004. Since then, they have been Democratic states in every election, although Hillary Clinton did quite weaken them in 2016, and so that does give Trump an opportunity to win them back. In the state of Colorado, Joe Biden leads by a 6-point margin. That is less than half his 14-point margin from the 2020 election. So here, once again, we see another significant improvement in favor of Trump. And in New Mexico, same thing. Biden won the state by 10 points. Trump is now only just behind by 8% according to the most recent poll. So both New Mexico and Colorado are going to be likely Democratic states, but these are not states that Biden is expected to win by the double-digit margins he won by last time. They're only expected to go to him by just over 5 points. Next up, we have Texas, and we're going to go over the entire South before we move on to the Midwest and the Northeast, where we have the most surprising data, especially in states like Minnesota, New York, and New Jersey. But starting off with Texas, 40 electoral votes. This is the fastest growing state in the country. It is set to take over California as being the most populated state in the near future. And in Texas, Donald Trump leads by 9 percentage points, very close to the 9.4% average that the former president is ahead by. And if you look at the 2020 election, Trump won this state by 5.6. In 2016, he won it by 9. So we're going to see a rebound for Trump in 2024. That margin is going to go up. Some people are saying Texas is shifting to the left. As a whole, you could say that's true because in 2012, Mitt Romney won the state by 16 points. However, it's going to be red for a very long time. There are a lot of voters Democrats are going to have to flip just because of how big of a state Texas is. And at least in the near future, it is going to remain red. And these 40 electoral votes are going to be very valuable for Republicans going forward. So Texas is going to be a very solid, likely Republican state. Meanwhile, in the rest of the South, we have polling from basically every single state. And just like in these states up here, like Idaho, Montana, North Dakota, Donald Trump leads by solid margins. We don't have any new polling, so there's really no point to going through all of them. However, in these states, Donald Trump is going to destroy Joe Biden. West Virginia, Kentucky, Tennessee, South Carolina, Alabama, Mississippi, Missouri, Arkansas, and Louisiana. These states are not going to be close. They were all solid for Trump in 2020, and they will be once again in 2024. We do have some slightly more competitive states in the South, however, and so we're going to get into them now. Starting off with Virginia, we're going to move our way down to Florida. So in the Commonwealth of Virginia, Joe Biden leads by 4% according to the most recent poll. Now, we did see that after he was elected in 2020, Glenn Youngkin, a Republican, was elected governor in the state. So pretty quickly, we saw a lot of voters in the state turn against Biden and the Democrats. And considering Hillary Clinton's poor performance in the state from 2016, Donald Trump does have a sliver of a chance at flipping the state of Virginia, and the latest polling really doesn't put Biden in too great of a position. So the state right now is only going to be lean Democrat. It is one of the most competitive states in the country. In North Carolina, Trump leads by 9 points, according to the most recent Emerson College poll. If we look at the polling average, it's been Trump leading throughout the entirety of the election cycle. North Carolina is not going to be close. Trump won it in both of his elections. Biden virtually has no chance at flipping it, considering he is significantly less popular than he was in the last election. So North Carolina will be likely Republican. Georgia is also not really going to be too close either when we have Kennedy factored in. Trump leads by 6 percentage points. This is once again according to Emerson College and The Hill. This is a relatively new poll. And once again, in the polling average in a state that Biden actually won in 2020, Biden has never even been close to overtaking Trump in the polling average. And this goes back over 3 months. If we look at 2020, Georgia was the closest state in the entire election. And if Biden's going to lose any state, it's going to be Georgia, a state that re-elected Brian Kemp, its popular Republican governor, in 2022. So Georgia is going to be likely Republican as well. And finally, Florida is actually going to be a solid red state. We have one four-way poll that includes Kennedy, and here we see Donald Trump leading by 14 percentage points. This is actually a very new poll conducted by Emerson College, released less than a month ago. Donald Trump with a very solid margin in a state that was thought to be very close previously. 2020 2020, Trump won by 3.4. In 2016, that margin was 1.2. And in 2012, Barack Obama only managed to scrape by with a 0.88 percentage point victory. It was the closest election in the entire country, the closest state out of all 50, the only tilt state on the map. But now Florida is solid red. It voted for Marco Rubio and Ron DeSantis by solid margins in 2022, and it honestly isn't going to go back to being competitive anytime soon. And so we're seeing a lot of red on this map now. I mean, only a few splotches of blue. Moving to the Midwest, things are not going to get too much better for Joe Biden, especially considering the fact that he has now lost his lead in Minnesota. This is a state that hasn't voted red since 1972. It is the longest streak of continuously voting for Democrats in presidential elections. Joe Biden won it by 7 points in 2020, but in 2016, Trump came within 2 percentage points of defeating Clinton in the state. So there were definitely vulnerabilities for Democrats in Minnesota, and there have been for a while. However, according to the latest polling, Donald Trump leads against Joe Biden in a head-to-head. If you remove Robert F. Kennedy, Trump leads by 5. And in the poll that includes every single candidate, this is the one that we want to look at because in the end, we're going to see all of these candidates on the ballot. We have an even race between Biden and Trump. And since Trump leads in the other 2 polls that were conducted with it, with multiple other candidates as well as with just the 2 main ones, we see Donald Trump leading. So Minnesota is going to be tilt red on this map. 10 electoral votes going to Donald Trump. In Iowa, this is a state that used to be very close under Obama, under Bush. I mean, just look at the margins back in 2008. Iowa voted for Obama by 9.5. But in just the election prior, the state voted for Bush, and in 2000, it barely voted for Gore. In 2012, the state of Iowa was a little bit closer. However, in 2016, Trump won it, and the state hasn't looked back since. 2020, Trump won it by essentially the same margin. We saw the governor there, Kim Reynolds, getting reelected by a 20-point margin in 2022. Iowa is a red state, and the polling shows that. Donald Trump leads by 15%, according to the latest Des Moines Register poll, and the Des Moines Register is the best pollster in Iowa. So the state will be solid red. In Wisconsin, the latest polling has Trump ahead by 5 points. There was actually a recent Fox News poll that showed Biden ahead by 2, but according to this poll from Emerson College, which is much newer, Trump leads by 5, and this expands his lead in the polling average to 1.8. And in a state that Biden won in the last election, a state that used to be a pretty reliably blue state, Trump is performing very well in the polling and has led throughout the entirety of the cycle. So Wisconsin is going to be likely Republican, while the state of Illinois is going to be likely, but instead for Joe Biden. The latest polling has him ahead by 9 percentage points. Still a pretty weak margin considering he won the state by 17 points in 2020. So we're going to fill in Illinois as being likely blue. In neighboring Indiana, Trump leads by 21 points. Even without Mike Pence, he's going to destroy Joe Biden in the state of Indiana. It's going to be solid red. Up in Michigan, this is the closest state out of the trio of Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. And according to the latest polling, we see Trump ahead by 1 percentage point. So it's going to be pretty competitive in the Wolverine state, but Trump still does have an edge according to the latest data that we have. The polling average has him up by 0.2. So it's going to be close, but for right now, Trump still maintains a very slight edge. So it's going to be lean Republican. In the Buckeye state of Ohio, we have Trump ahead by 12. This will make the state solid for the former president. Ohio has come a long way, just like Iowa. We've seen over the last few cycles, Ohio went from being an Obama state twice and then a Trump state twice, and in 2024, it's going to be solid red. And finally, in Pennsylvania, the Keystone State, this is Biden's birth state. Donald Trump leads by 4%, according to the latest poll conducted by The Hill and Emerson College. And so we will fill in Pennsylvania as being lean Republican. Basically, the entire Midwest has been painted in red with the exception of Illinois. And to finish off the map, we're going to fill in the Northeast. There are going to be some solid blue states and also some states where we don't have any data from, specifically Delaware and the District of Columbia. We're going to fill those in at the end of this video. But starting off with the solid blue states, Biden leads by 15% in Maryland, although this is a pretty weak margin considering he carried the state by 33 in the last election. In Vermont, Biden leads by 31. Massachusetts, he's ahead by 30. And finally, in Rhode Island, Joe Biden's ahead by 17. So these states are all going to be solid blue, although not as much as they were in 2020. The remaining states are all going to be a little bit more competitive. Starting off with Connecticut, we have a likely Democratic state with the incumbent president leading by just 9 points. This is pretty subpar. It's less than half of his margin from 2020. While in New York and New Jersey, we see a pretty similar story. These are two states that were some of the bluest in 2020 and in previous elections. I mean, New York is just known for how liberal it is, but according to the latest polling, Biden leads by 10 percentage points. And this is a recurring theme. Any poll released in the last 6 months shows Biden ahead by a subpar margin, all of them less than 12 percentage points. If you go back to earlier in 2023, Biden's doing relatively well, but the resignation of Andrew Cuomo and Kathy Hochul's unpopularity have really damaged Democrats. Eric Adams is also under investigation. He's the mayor of New York, and his approval is worse than Trump's in New York City, and that's literally just the city. So Democrats are very unpopular in the Empire State right now, and that's why Biden's doing so poorly in a state that he won by 23 points in the last election. So New York is also going to be likely blue, and so will New Jersey, where Senator Bob Menendez has been charged multiple times in the last few years for bribery, and he is not running for re-election, which is honestly a very good thing for Democrats. But as a result, Biden's only ahead by 7 points according to the latest poll, and this is from the end of March, so it's relatively recent. Biden is only on track to winning New Jersey by a likely margin. Up in New Hampshire, we have Biden ahead by 7 points as well, although it's pretty surprising that New Hampshire is just as blue as New Jersey now. This was a relatively competitive state in 2020, but Biden still did manage to come out with a 7-point win. The reason why a lot of people are still watching it is because in 2016, Trump did particularly well. He came within half a percentage point of actually flipping the Granite State, but as of right now, Biden's still holding up in New Hampshire. So New Hampshire is going to be likely Democratic. And finally, in Maine, we have some pretty surprising results here. In the 1st district, Biden leads by 8, just 8 percentage points. Honestly, pretty weak. But in the 2nd district, Trump is ahead by 20. This is the largest margin we've seen for a Republican in decades, and no Republican has won the state as a whole going all the way back to the 90s. So Trump leading by a 6-point margin in the state at large is a pretty big deal. This is the most recent poll according to Pan Atlantic Research. Trump leads by 6% in Maine's at-large vote, and this will give him the 2 electoral votes from that. And so with all of these states filled in that we have polling from, we have Trump at 334, Biden at 195, although we of course know that the states of Delaware and the District of Columbia will go for Biden. And then for Trump, he's going to win the 1st and 3rd districts pretty easily, and he is on track to winning that 2nd district as well. So with the map filled in, this is based on the most recent poll conducted in all 50 states. Donald Trump is on track to winning the election by a huge 136 electoral vote margin. He's at 337, and Biden trails at just 201. Thank you guys so much for watching, and make sure you like it down below if you enjoyed it. Subscribe to my channel for consistent political uploads leading up to November, and comment down below who you think is going to win the 2024 election.